I was here when Karel de Gucht made his presentation, and he also mentioned Huawei a couple of times. He also mentioned digital very often. I think 60% of his speech was about digital, which was easier for me because he gave a lot of, well, he helped me a lot to prepare this. So what I wanted to say, so for people like you and me, so looking at a Netflix series faster on your computer, you can't. Well, maybe some people can, but reading faster, you can't. So it's not about us. It's about machines. It's about, especially, the big difference is it will be much faster, but there will be no latency. I don't know whether you have this experience, but if you listen to the radio, and you just listen to the radio, the same radio, but then via Wi-Fi, there's a delay. That's the internet. So you can listen every time when you start at the radio, and then you put your PC, the radio on your PC, it will be a couple of sentences later that you will hear again. So that's because the mobile networks right now, although 4G is faster than 3G, they have a lot of latency. And latency, that's okay if you just want to send an email or ask for a video or so, it doesn't matter. But if you want to have surgery remote, then that latency is not acceptable. And 5G has no latency. So that's a very, very big difference. It's 100 times faster than 4G. That's the second difference. But the most important difference is the quality. So if I'm sending something to you and the Wi-Fi is not there, or just for a couple of seconds it doesn't work, that's the mobile networks right now. If I'm using the 4G networks, most of the time it works, not always. But with 5G you have guarantees, so you can know that your communication will be there. So that means that for businesses, this will make an incredible difference. Let me give you a concrete example. If you have now, you're driving and you have sensors in the different cars, and so you have now all these new cars that are stopping automatically if your car comes closer to the one before you. But it cannot look behind the corner. With 5G, it will be able. The car will know that there's a car coming from behind the corner, although he cannot see it. No latency, very fast, and quality. I have a company, an industrial company. They have a lot of fork trucks, so the things that are in a lot of warehouses. And they have a lot of accidents with the fork trucks. They rent. They sell them and they rent them. And some environments seem to be very more risky for those machines. And so those people, the IT manager of that company just says, if I would be able to have cameras on all the machines that are used, I would be able to film before the accident. So if there's an accident, I can go back to the 2 or 3 minutes before the accident and I can see what happened. That would be much easier with the discussions with the insurance company. They do it now. They have in the more dangerous, the environments where they have a lot of accidents, they already use cameras, but they do it now with USB. So can you imagine that somebody with USB is having all this information, need to upload it to a PC? So people start thinking about the opportunities of 5G, but it's really, well, you don't have to do anything, but what I would like you to remind is that it's a game changer. Not tomorrow, it will take some time, but it's going to change a lot. So there is now 5G in a lot of countries right now, so Korea, China, Switzerland in Europe. In Japan, they will have next year the Olympic Games, and that they want to make it a showcase for 5G. So they want to offer a complete new experiences with giving the athletes some wearables. I don't know what it will happen because it's quite soon. But it starts, not in Belgium because, well, we are a complicated country. And there were some discussions when we had the previous government, and that's, well, typical Belgium situation. So if you want to have 5G networks, like your Proximus or your Orange or your Telenet, you said, okay, we want to have those 5G networks, then you need spectrum. You need a scarce resource because the spectrum, what you need to have this, to build these networks, it's limited. And so what countries say is, okay, you can have an auction, and the one who's paying most is getting the most. You can have different ways of organizing auctions. You can try to have as much money out of it as a country, or you can say we want it to be used as efficient as possible because we think about the benefits for the economy. So every country is a little bit different. And Belgium is very different because there is the struggle not about how are we going to use this spectrum very efficiently or how are we going to make the most out of it. No, they are just struggling between the communities and the federal level. So the federal level is organizing the auction. So they think it will be about 700 million euros that they will get out of the market for those new spectrum auctions. But then there are the discussions with the communities saying, but wait, telecommunications, 5G is telecommunications, yes. So that's federal, but everything which is transferred via those networks, that's media. And media, that's the communities. So the money should go to us. And so they had long discussions. It's not solved yet. It should have been ready in the summer of 2018 already, and it's not going to be there. And so we have now, well, you know, the political situation. In the current affairs, it's a little bit different. It's a little bit difficult. In the new government, well, the discussions are still taking place. But I think that Belgium will not be the first in Europe to have 5G, which is a shame because we have a lot of international companies, as I said before, and as you all know, we are a very, very small country. And if you are, let's say, a company in the port of Antwerp and you want to have an application for 5G to have a better efficiency in the way you work, you can have it maybe in Hamburg and maybe in Rotterdam, but probably not in Antwerp at the same time. That's not so good for the economy. Another example, while I'm talking about the ports, there is, by coincidence, and I'm not going to do in the details because that would bring me too far, but by coincidence, a very little company who was once willing to offer Wi-Fi in different cities, they have spectrum already in the 5G spectrum band that will now be auctioned. So by coincidence, a small company has something which is unique right now because all the other ones like Proximus and Orange and Telenet, they don't have the spectrum for 5G, that company has. So they have a little advantage right now. Of course, the devices are not there yet, so it's not really 5G. But they are also already going to some companies, and they've done a very nice exercise. You do know, well, you probably you can imagine that in the port you have all these companies treating the containers. Lots of containers coming every day, need to be replaced, need to be transferred from one place to another. And so you have this large cradle machine, so kind of cranes, so I call it a spider, so it's very high and they can wear or carry a couple of containers. So what they've done, they made an offer, the little company who's offering this so-called 5G services right now. They said, okay, we have an offer to a certain potential customer. It was going to cost 300,000 euros. 300,000 euros, that's quite a serious amount. And so to see whether there was a business case, for a week, they just followed those cradle cranes at the site of the company, and they came to the incredible result that every day those machines, they were driving 3 hours in a non-optimal way every day. 3 hours a day, going to the wrong part or not taking the shortest way. So when they knew that, the business case was made immediately. As I said, I was a couple of weeks ago in China, and so I was visiting Huawei. And so they have now 187 villages or sites that they created where the mobile telecommunications operators work together with industry companies, with IT companies to see what kind of applications could be interesting for 5G. And they also, their conclusion is very, very clear that it's especially about optimization, more efficiency in industry. And so then you come back to the point that 5G is for B2B and it's going to change, will have a lot of opportunities for the economy. And so now I'm come back to your questions on Huawei. I'm not going to take political statements or so. I'm just going to tell you what I hear and what I see. I have to think about it. 28 years ago, I went the first time to China. That was just on holiday with my husband, and that was a time then in Beijing you had all bicycles and people just wearing the same kind of clothing. And at that time, the guide we had, she told, yeah, we are working on innovation. We think that is going to be very important, 28 years ago. And we are building something in the south of China, very close to Hong Kong, which was owned by the UK at that moment. Because innovation, that's the way to go. Okay, I never thought about it anymore. I remember Shenzhen, something in the south of China, innovation, but I forgot. Until 6 years ago. So Caroline mentioned, so I'm working for the Belgium Association, but you have associations like ours also in other countries. And so together, if we need to go to the international level, we speak together. So we have INTAC, which is an international organization where there are also people like from Australia and so on. We have also Eurodigital. It's not important, but at that time, we organized a meeting of INTAC with people from Australia, New Zealand, Indonesia, and India, and some people from Europe. And the meeting was in Hong Kong. That was a little bit in the middle, more or less. Okay. And so our Australian colleagues, they said, well, it would be nice, in the south of China, they have something very special. It's a kind of innovation part. It's called Shenzhen, and it's growing very fast, and we can go there. Because there's a company, it's Huawei or Huawei. We do not know how to pronounce it, but it will be good. So we went there, being 8 people, going to Huawei, which we didn't know at that time. We'd never heard about it. And they showed us some mobile phones, and they looked quite, at that time, I think it was the BlackBerry time here, so we had similar devices here, but it was quite modern. And somebody from the group asked, yeah, okay, nice, but you're just new in the market. Well, what are you going to do with it? Well, we planned from this model, we will make 3 million. And we said, 3 million mobile phones? That was something I always remind. If you see now where Huawei is, and that's only 5-6 years ago, in the meantime, they came to all the European countries. If you see in Belgium, the telecom operators, and I'm always taking the 3 major ones, Proximus, Telenet, and Orange, they work with Huawei or ZTE for at least part of their networks. I remember very well when we had a meeting with Colt, which is a B2B telecommunications operator, when they first mentioned that they were going to work with Chinese material for their networks, their international fixed networks, now also at the same period, that people were a little bit, are they really going to work with cheap Chinese material? We had a very, very wrong image of what was going to happen. And then it went very, very fast. And I have no figures, but I think in most European countries, Chinese material is being used. And if we compare, so for the 5G networks, there is not that many choices. You have Ericsson, you have Nokia, and you have Huawei, to put it very black and white. Now there are a lot of discussions because last week I saw my Australian colleague because she was visiting Europe. And so in Australia, they decided we will not have Chinese material for 5G in Australia, because in the US they don't like it, so we will follow the US because we're good friends. But at the other hand, the port in the north of Australia, Darwin, it's bought by Chinese. Most export of Australia goes to China, so it is very, very, very confusing what all is happening right now. And I think for the the European companies, there is no European position right now on the 5G networks, so it will have enormous consequences. Whether it's about the state of the art, because in general I think we can say that the technology of Huawei is further advanced than the one from Ericsson and Nokia. There are a lot of concerns about security. These are really very difficult decisions that people will need to take at the European level, I hope, and not at the Belgium level. But people cannot wait to make the decisions because it's moving very fast. So it's a very, very complicated situation. Something else is what is popping up again. So I'm doing this job for quite some time, and I remember very well when 4G started that we had a lot of questions about the safety and radiation risks of the mobile networks. That is really coming back now because people hear, okay, 5G networks, you need much more antennas. Will it be more dangerous than the 4G? It seems it is not the case because the antennas are smaller and there are more of them, but they work in a different way. but sometimes it's also a kind of political background. So maybe you know that we have a very big issue here in Brussels. So going in Brussels, you will have a lot of places where 4G is a problem on quite some places, and they are known with the telecommunications operators. That is because the Brussels government decided a couple of years ago to go down with the radiation of the GSM antennas very, very severe. So the norm in Brussels is 50 times stronger than the one from the WHO, so the World Health Organization. And that was because they want to be very take precautions, and that's a good principle. But what you need to know is when the antennas have not that much power with radiation, then your smartphone needs to have much more power, and that is the one that is close to your body. So it's all going in different directions. What we see, so 5G in Switzerland, it's the first European country starting with the rollout of 5G. And there are now Facebook groups and other groups protesting against the coming of 5G, and it's slowing down. So politics and technology are interlinked, and that's what I needed to mention. And I also, because I wanted to continue on Huawei, this picture was a surprise to me. So it's a little bit old because it's a picture I took in the Shanghai Towers. So the Shanghai Tower is the third one to the left. So you have the two other ones that are higher. But these were, at the time when the Shanghai Tower was built, the ones that were going to be built. Some of them are there now. So it's future tallest, but some of them is not future, is being built. But from those 20, you can't read it because the picture is not clear enough. But from those 20, 10 are in China. And that's worldwide. So just to give you an example that China is really moving very fast. So another word, something else companies really have to face is the way digital impacts the employees. First of all, you have the companies like Deliveroo and so on, a lot working with the self-employed. A lot of questions about social security of the workplace, and you see also some companies pushing people who work for them as an employee to an independent status. So that's a very social impact technology has there. Another point is user adoption of digital tools. So different generations work in companies right now, and it's very difficult for somebody who's maybe 62, works on a different way than somebody just enters the company and is used to work with all the applications and want to do everything electronically and not using paper. So that is really a very, very big challenge for companies right now. So how do you let people work together, feeling comfortable? Some people say this kind of rooms will not exist in a couple of years, that university are going to reinvent themselves. But on the other hand, it's not only about students learning, having a basic education, but it's lifelong learning. I know it's a kind of slogan, but this is the way it is right now, because companies change the way they work, and people have to change. So a very, very important topic right now in companies is change management. How do you have people accept the new technologies? And it's really not easy. The impact of AI on the jobs. Pessimists will say a lot of jobs will not exist anymore. Optimists will say, well, look at the economy 200 years ago when everybody was working in agriculture. If you would have known the figures, and you would say, okay, from everybody until maybe now 3-4% of the people working in agriculture, all the other people don't have work anymore, which is not the case. I can't predict the future, but the impact is a very big question mark, but the impact will be serious. So on employees, the digital world also has a serious impact. So let's go to the international level. I always try to explain, especially when I hear about the discussions about, let's say, Flanders and the federal government on the benefits of the money of the auctions of 5G, that maybe once in a while you need to think about how small Belgium is in the world. This is only Europe, of course. But there is a lot of which needs to be done at the international level. And so we should have a digital single market. That's a theory. The theory is we need to have a single market. Everything needs to be traded within Europe without borders, and that should be the same for data, for the digital products. But it's not the case. So how did it start? Well, you are too young to remember probably, but only 20 years ago, so in 1998, until then we had monopolies. So maybe you all know the NMBS and NNCB, so the train company. That was the same situation for telecommunications. There was just what was called the RTT, Régie de Téléphone Télégraphe. That was it. It took 20 days if you wanted to have a telephone, a fixed telephone at your house, when you were lucky. So that's only 20 years ago. That's not such a long time. And so at that time, people in the European Union said, okay, but telecommunications networks, that is going to be very important. We need to see that there is some competition, that it's a little bit more efficient. And so they broke up the monopolies. And every country in Europe from the 1st of January 1998 had to give competitors the chance to come to the market. So that's why we now speak about 3 operators, and there are other operators that I'm not going to mention now, but that are really focusing on the B2B market. So the monopolies broke up. That's already something. You have number portability. If you want to say, okay, I want to go from one mobile operator to the other one, so you can have it just like that. It doesn't take long. Cheaper international communications. So before I worked for Intec, but in that period, when we had these discussions with the European Commission or my predecessors, they went to the European Commission saying, wait, if I have a leased line that was a kind of, let's say, a big pipe between 2 sites, if I have a leased line, a fixed, fast, well, in that time, fast, it would not be fast anymore now, but if you had it between Brussels and Antwerp, and you had the same line, but maybe between Brussels and Paris or Brussels and Amsterdam, for the same characteristics, you would pay maybe 20 times the price. And so what we've done at that time is we made an analysis in different countries of the different prices, local lease lines and international lease lines. And then it immediately became very, very clear that there was a problem, that the borders, the physical borders of the country borders were something, there was no cost justification for it, maybe a little bit, because you have to treat with different languages or different companies, but so it helped. So the international communications went down, and so of course roaming was stopped, which is a big advantage. Maybe it's nice for you, but especially for companies. I remember very well until a couple of years ago when people from the company were going to other countries, the first advice was put out your roaming, which is not very easy to work with, especially because at that time there was you were not having Wi-Fi everywhere. So this is how it started. But now we have complete different elements. Security is one of them. When we did a survey, well, we of course also always need to know on which topics we need to work in the association. So every time in June we do a survey of the members. We say, okay, what is bothering you? Where do you want us to work on? And we just ask them their priorities. Out of the top 10 priorities of companies in digital, 6 are about security. Whether it's about security by design, so how do you develop an application that is secure? What about your mobile workforce, people that go everywhere? What if people go to China? What happens? Or to the US? Doesn't matter. It doesn't need to be China. But so security is a very big issue, and it's really not that people that are not really very well protected. Maersk, so a very large company in international, active in very, very different ports, had an attack. And the only thing why they resolved the problem, they were not lucky because they had this problem, but the way they could stop the attack was because at the time when it happened, the site in Nigeria was not connected for one reason or another. And so they had a safe environment at that time because that site was not connected, and from there they could take it again. So the house at the top is the Court of Justice of Berlin. They were hacked. You can read every day there are companies being hacked. What we see, what companies come and tell us, is that they are victim of what is called CEO fraud. So what is happening, and I know it very well because it happened to a company I know quite well. So CEO sends an email to the head of finance. The email really looks like it comes from the CEO, but it is not. It's just a fake email. But the signature, the look and feel, and the tone is something like, well, I know I can trust you. We are in the middle of an acquisition, so please don't talk to anybody about this. But can you transfer this amount of money to that account? So that person says, okay, my CEO is asking me to do this, and I'm not able to ask something, to say something about it, because people don't think these things happen. But these happen really a lot. I know a lot of companies, and I only know the ones who come and tell me, so most of them are not so proud to tell. So I probably know a lot of companies that had the problem, but where I'm not aware of. So CEO fraud is happening. Ransomware is not only with people like you and me, it's also happening with companies. And if you are there and they say, okay, your computers are now down, and if you don't pay this amount of money, you don't get your files back, then you have a very big problem. It's not only the people in companies or people with bad intentions, criminals. It's also the different countries. So this is from the news from a month ago. So where Facebook says we have a problem with it, it's in this case a company from Israel, because they saw, Facebook owns WhatsApp, by the way. So they saw that there was some malware that could be used by companies, well, not companies, but the intelligence services of countries, but also, of course, not only for people, maybe potential terrorists, but also for other people. It just happens, and it happens from all countries to all countries, because there's a lot of, at the news last week, it was a lot about the Belgium delegation going to China and that they had so many attacks. I can tell you that a lot of companies are worried because they have a lot of information. For example, with Microsoft, it's just an example. It could be another company as well. And they have laws in the US where US companies are obliged to give information to the intelligence services of the US as well, if they ask for it. Also from European customers, also if the information is not in the US, but in Europe. So it's not for nothing that the last months that we had quite some meetings with the American embassy. They are now very interested in us. They were not interested at all in Baltic because we were just doing some IT managers, but now with all this cloud stuff and information going everywhere, it really became a very, very political issue. And I don't have to tell you, with the Snowden files that revealed a lot. So we see the move to the cloud. So companies more and more don't have their data centers in their cellars, but they have their information stored at Google or Amazon or Microsoft or other companies. And now they start realizing, because the political environment is a little bit difficult, like, what happens if our software provider tomorrow says, well, it was nice, but we stop your access. So it's a little bit, well, not a little bit, it's a complete different situation than it used to be a couple of years. I know a company, a Belgian company, from Flanders, who is doing a lot of exportation to Iran, and they had no problem at all because they say this is Belgium stuff, so we can export to Iran. But then suddenly they realized that they had software. Of course, software is everywhere. They had software in their machines being Java. That was an open source, so it was not owned by anyone. But Java was bought by Oracle, an American company, and so they said, we are not able, because of the ban from American goods to Iran, to sell our products anymore. That's the far it goes. So there are some European initiatives on cybersecurity. The Commission just wants companies to be aware of cybersecurity, which is not easy because most of the time people become aware if it's in the news or when something happens to you or to somebody you know very well. But they realize that for critical actors in the economy, and that's the banks or the utility companies, the communications operators, but also hospitals, it goes quite far. They say, okay, we need to make sure that the security measures of those IT security measures of those organizations are quite severe. And so they have now a directive, the Network and Information Security Directive. So countries have 2 years to implement that in their legislation. Belgium was too late, as happens quite often. So we are now transferring it. It should have been ready a couple of months ago, but it will come. But this is really posing a lot of companies for questions, because they say, okay, we now need to introduce it, but how? Because this is all new. So as you are all studying politics, you know the difference between a directive and regulation? You should. So the cybersecurity, the NIS is a directive, so every country has an implementation and can maybe do some interpretations of the text. On privacy, of course, privacy is very important for all of us. The General Data Protection Regulation is a regulation, so that means that countries do not have to implement it. It's just valid for every country because it's a regulation, but with some exceptions, like an example is the age of the children. So in Belgium, they have chosen 13 years, that's the age we say, then under 13 years you are a child, because then you need to have more severe measures on privacy, that the parents need to give some consent instead of the child itself. But in other European countries, it's 16 or 12, so that's a difficulty. Something else is about religion. So in some European countries, you have an obligation, you have the choice to say, part of my tax money is not going to the most important church, but to the one I choose. In Germany, for example, that's the case, and there the companies need to intervene in bringing that tax money to the right religion chosen by the employee. In Belgium, it's absolutely forbidden to keep track as a company of religion of your employees. So it's a little bit difficult to implement, as a lot of European countries are working in different countries. On privacy, there are, of course, a lot of concerns. There's now a report from Amnesty International saying how the business models of Google and Facebook are treating human rights. Well, I'm not really have to discuss the human rights aspects. But what I see is that there are a lot of concerns in companies as well. So for privacy, so the General Data Protection Regulation is a very tough one because, as I said, it's a lot of pages, it's 80 pages of law, but there is a European Board of Data Protection and they continue to make guidelines, extra guidelines, 100 pages, another 100 pages. So it's very difficult to follow because it's very new and they say, oh, we didn't think about this and we didn't think about that. But as a company, you need to be compliant with the law. I mean, otherwise you're not okay. The problem with this GDPR, the intention is very good. I think we have, as Europeans, made a statement that privacy is something we care of, and that we are a little bit right now seen as an example for other parts of the world. But the problem with this regulation is that it was made. I talked to some people from the European Parliament when the GDPR was discussed, and they were not thinking about companies selling shoes or companies making whatever. They were always thinking about Google, Facebook, Microsoft, and Apple and so on. And so that maybe we need to make it very, very difficult to make those giants, the work for those giants very difficult. But so they forgot that it's a law, and the law is there for everybody. And so what they've done is, if you have a problem, so you have a leak of the privacy of personal data from your customers or so on, you risk to have a fine of 4% of your turnover, which is enormous. And so companies are really very, very aware about the risk they have, also at the board levels. Although I must say now that it's less in the press that in some companies it seems that that they are doing a little bit easier right now. But what we've done is we've been working on it very, very hard, discussing with the Privacy Council, with the Privacy Commission, which is now called the Data Protection Authority, because people, of course, don't want to have those fines, so they want to do everything properly. It is very difficult, so questions pop up. So that's why we made what we call our privacy council. So it's a group of 55 privacy specialists really going into details. And why am I telling you this? Because you're not interested in how companies work and what they do. You are interested in the political level. We have a problem with large software companies. First, I have to tell you, so as you are maybe having pictures or working with Google with other students, if you have to have a common project or whatever, so companies are putting their data more and more in the cloud. So it's our number one priority this year is what do we need to do with our software? Do we need to keep it in-house? Do we need to put it in the cloud? Do we need more the critical ones at home or in the company, and the more general ones like the emails and so on in the cloud? So it's a very big issue for companies, the IT architecture. So how do you need to build, and where are your data going to be? Are they going to be in Europe? Are they not going to be in Europe? All these questions like security, privacy, and so on. So this is the context. So companies thinking about, we need to do something with our IT architecture, and it's probably going the way forward to the cloud. But what we see when we discuss these privacy issues, then you see that we have this problem with market concentration. So if these are the biggest companies there's a mistake, worldwide. In 2019, when I would have made this list 15 years ago, there probably would not have been one tech company in the list. So Apple, Microsoft bought LinkedIn, Amazon has Amazon Web Services, offering a lot of cloud services to companies worldwide. Alphabet, which is the holding on top of Google. Berkshire Hathaway is an investment company. Facebook, owning Instagram, owning WhatsApp. I know a lot of friends, I'm from an older generation, so they say, I don't want to use Facebook anymore because they are not okay with privacy. I'm going to use Instagram right now. It's just the same. Alibaba and Tencent, so these are Chinese companies. Alibaba came to Belgium, and I must say that also in the business environment that I hear the name more and more, that people expect that they will be important. And Tencent is the one using WeChat, and WeChat, some people say, WeChat is a kind of the Chinese WhatsApp. It's not, it's much more. You can do the payments, you can use your mobile phone. In the context of WeChat, you have everything. So the biggest companies worldwide are tech companies, and the companies are really became very, very important for other companies, non-software companies. Software is everywhere, so whether it's about artificial intelligence, whether it's about what you want to buy, whether it's about how the customer experience you want to give, whether it's about your production process, the supply chain, software is everywhere. And so people need to negotiate with the companies on their software contracts. And the licensing models of SAP, of Oracle, of IBM, of Microsoft, so large business companies, is very, very complex. Even if you want to say, I want to be 100% reliable, if you are buying an Office 365 or another license, it's quite clear it's one person or 5 persons. If you have Netflix in the family, you can have 5 persons for one price, or Spotify. But if you need to do that for a company, and then the software providers, they start saying, maybe a license for a user, or maybe a license for a machine, or no, maybe one license which is possible to use on 5 devices. But what about a company like Colruyt? We have a lot of people not always at their desk. They want to share computers. So it's very, very complicated, and but quite often they change the agreements just when people are using the software. So they change the rules of the game. So if you have a company saying, you need a license, I make it easy. You make a license, one user, one license. That's easy. But then after a while, say, this is not going to work anymore. So we are now going to devices. So people have a smartphone and a PC, so 2 devices for every person. But that's not for everybody the case. And then it becomes, and now the new thing is a large software vendor. They say now, but if you are using our software and you are making a lot of turnover, That's because you're using our software because it's so efficient and to have it in your company. So instead of having a license for the users or the devices, we just make the license price based on your turnover. Okay, because that's why you're using this software. So it's going in all directions, and there we absolutely need some regulations. So we had some meetings with the European Commission on Friday with DG Competition, and we are now having the luck that Margaretha Vestager is Commissioner for Digital and for Competition, so that they can work together. We showed them this kind of picture. These are our Belgium figures. What we asked our members is, if you are going to the cloud, you need infrastructure, so let's say just space. It's more than that, but okay, let's call it space and servers. Where do you put them? And this is the answer. So Belgium is very conservative. In a lot of other countries, it will be more Amazon and less Microsoft, but Microsoft and Google and Amazon will be there always. And all the other ones can be Proximus, can be CGK, can be some Belgium companies. But this is going higher up every year. So you all have heard about the systemic banks, so the banks that are too big to fail, the banks that are very important for our economy. What we feel now is that the software giants are going the same way. So the large companies, the large tech companies, they have the possibility to really define a lot how companies work, which might not be a healthy situation. This is I think it's, I don't know Swedish, but I think it's Witbook, white paper. That it is Swedish, and so our Swedish association, they made a paper on what about cloud? What is the way forward? What about sovereignty, the way we can make decisions on our data? Just today there's a meeting, well it's probably 7 o'clock, so it should be done right now, but there's a meeting in Helsinki. The Commission said, okay, we understand that you have a problem, that there is not a really good balance between the large tech companies and the users, the business users. We will make a code of conduct on cloud services. And there we will put all the principles those companies need to follow. So no URLs in the contract, no unilateral changes, not just coming to your company to have an audit, which costs you a whole lot of money, a lot of practices that are really not that healthy. And today the results should be handed over to the Commission, and we really had a big problem because we really had no agreement between the business users and the suppliers, because at the end they had, for 2 years, they had meetings every Friday afternoon saying this comma, this point, we need to change this amendment. So they have a whole lot of batteries of lawyers, of lobbyists at the Commission, which we just could not follow the rhythm. And so there is a very unbalanced result right now, which is a pity. So our Dutch colleagues, they just had a very large article in a Dutch newspaper last week that they said the way we are handled, this is not okay anymore. So the feeling we have a little bit, and it may be a little bit exaggerated, but the vendor lock-in is a reality, and that's not a healthy situation. And it's a little bit like, okay, we talked about China, we talked about the US. Europe really has a problem when it comes to software and when it comes to the networks, which is not so good. And Europe is doing, they gave some fines to Google and to Apple and so on specific cases. Like they say, okay, Google, it was very clear that they had, when you were looking for something, that the products in their shop were shown higher than the other results. But that is not the essence, so it needs to go much further. So I was very surprised last month that the Germans now started a new initiative, so sorry, it's in Dutch. So they said, we need a European cloud. They now, Merkel and Macron talked about it, and so France and Germany are saying we are going to make a European cloud, like we did with, as an alternative for Boeing, we had Airbus, where also France and Germany worked together, and with Atos, which is an IT company, which was French-oriented. I don't know. I hope it can bring us somewhere, but it's a competitive market, and I don't know whether a government-pushed initiative will help us. But it's good that they realize that digital is important. I listened to a speech of Frans Timmermans, who is a vice president of the European Commission, And he started his speech, it was not about digital, it was about the European Commission in general. He started this speech by saying, digitalization changes a lot, but politicians are not acting accordingly. They are not interested because you cannot have votes if you talk about digital. But I must say that I'm very happy that when I'm seeing the first sentences of the Ursula von der Leyen, so the new commission, where they say it's too small to read probably, but where they say digital has a huge impact on the way we live, work, and communicate. And we have to make our single market fit for the digital age. So that's already a good intention. So we absolutely will go a lot to the new commissioner, especially to Margrethe Vestager, to explain the difficulties or the challenges we face as companies. And so to end this presentation, I just wanted to say, so digital is really disrupting companies. They don't all realize, because I know a lot of people working in companies where they say, people from IT, these are the ones that are doing the synchronization between my smartphone and the PC. It's about much more, and it will disrupt companies. It will change everything, as also Karel de Gucht said here before. This is going to change a lot, and I really would like to end with this picture, because I just heard it on the news today that they have now cows with virtual reality glasses, and they make them think that they are on a green grass and that they want to make them happy because it seems that they give more milk then. So if they are having cows with virtual reality glasses, I think digital is really everywhere. Thank you.